If you clicked on this video, I have a question for you. From Capcom's Rolodex of franchises, which one is your favorite? You could go with the most recognizable names like Resident Evil, Street Fighter, Mega Man, Devil May Cry, or some Monster Hunter action. You could also go with some lesser known ones like Dead Rising, Okami, Dragon's Dogma, or any other fighting games like Darkstalkers. But if you really want to get into the weeds, you could pick something like Ghosts and Goblins. A lot of my friends lay their hats on Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, or Street Fighter. The series that I chose and deliberately left out of the list up to this point is none other than Ace Attorney. I love the series, and with there being 11 of them, there's a lot of love to go around. As the visual novel dork some of you know me to be, it's time for me to share my thoughts on it by starting with one of my favorite entries in the series, The Great Ace Attorney Adventures. Ace Attorney is a court drama that usually has you play as a defense attorney. You and your assistant go around trying to figure out the truth of each case by investigating the scene of the crime and defending your client in court while squaring off against the opposing prosecutor. While the main games have you play as Phoenix Wright and Apollo Justice, in this one you play as Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Naruhodo is a 23-year-old college student in 19th century Japan. He's also Phoenix Wright's predecessor, but that's nothing more than a fun fact, not something that you need to pay too much attention to. In Ace Attorney, there are usually 5 cases per game, and this game is no different. First we have Case 1, The Great Departure. Case 1 has us follow Naruhodo as he's accused of murdering a British man named John Wilson. His best friend, Kazuma Asogi, happens to be a lawyer and offers to defend him. But prior to the trial, a man named Yujin Mikotoba, a professor at their school, tells Naruhodo to refuse. Instead, he pushes for Naruhodo to represent himself. The reason being because Asogi's going to England soon as a foreign exchange student. But with the secret trial and Asogi without a doubt going to bat for Naruhodo at the drop of a hat, it could potentially fracture the program and cause tension between the two empires. So to avoid costing Asogi this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Naruhodo will defend himself, while Asogi will stand at the defendant's bench helping him out. This effectively results in Asogi defending him indirectly. Facing off against prosecutor Takatsuchi Alchi, the two partners in crime have a long road ahead in proving Naruhodo's innocence. Next we have Case 2, and the adventure of the unbreakable speckled band. Case 2 has a skip forward a couple months as we see Naruhodo on a passenger ship on its way to Great Britain. Asogi and Naruhodo managed to prove his innocence in court back in November, keeping the exchange alive. Asogi, however, saw something in Naruhodo during the trial. It was a latent talent to potentially be a defense attorney. As a result, he snuck his buddy onto the ship heading towards England and is now housing him in his cabin. In a cruel twist of fate, however, Naruhodo wakes up to find Asogi dead in their cabin. Now finding himself in another perilous situation, Naruhodo has to defend himself before they get to the next port, and he's arrested by the authorities. With help from Suzuto Mikotoba, who happens to be Asogi's judicial assistant and daughter of Yujin Mikotoba, they work together to find the truth behind Asogi's tragic death. Next we have Case 3 and the adventure of the runaway room. Case 3 has us land in Great Britain a month or so after Case 2. Naruhodo managed to prove his innocence thanks to Suzuto and an English gentleman by the name of Herlock Sholmes. During the trip, Naruhodo came to a realization. Asogi's life was cut short before he could realize his dream. So to honor his friend in his dream, Naruhodo takes his place instead by donning Karuma, his sword. Having Suzuto help him learn law, they train him to become an official lawyer so he can take Asogi's place. They go to a man who can help Naruhodo become a lawyer, Lord Chief Justice Male Strongheart. Seeing Naruhodo's resolve to carry on his friend's will, Strongheart gives Naruhodo a case to prove his worth. Only problem is that it's in an hour, so the two rush to the courthouse to meet their client, Magnus McGilded. While Naruhodo would rather not play with a man's life like this, he wouldn't want someone to go without a defense lawyer either. Squaring off against a new face in prosecutor Barack Van Zeeks, Naruhodo will go to bat for McGilded and prove his innocence. What Naruhodo and Suzuto won't know, however, is the importance that this case holds for their future in England. Next we have Case 4, The Adventure of the Clouded Kokoro. Case 4 takes place one day after Case 3. Naruhodo managed to get McGilded acquitted, but the truth behind the case is still dubious at best, as is substantiated by McGilded being found dead in the courtroom after the trial. He was set on fire in the omnibus. Van Zeeks is known as the Reaper of the Bailey, the reason being because whoever he prosecutes in court will die whether they are guilty or not. McGilded's case happens to fit the bill. With Case 3 looming heavy over our two goofballs' heads, they're presented with another case by Strongheart. They are to defend a fellow Japanese man named Saseki Natsumi, an actual person in history by the way. He's a foreign exchange student like Naruhodo, but he's already been here for a year and he hates it. His trial is the next day, which is a marginal improvement because they actually get to investigate the scene of the crime this time. Now Naruhodo and Suzuto have to face off against Van Zeeks once more to save Saseki from his fate. It's difficult, but they step up to the plate once more. Lastly, we have Case 5, The Adventure of the Unspeakable Story. Case 5 is the final case of the game, and it has us fast forward to April. Naruhodo and Suzuto get Saseki acquitted. Fortunately, unlike McGill did, he didn't die afterwards. Saseki, however, had enough of England and decided to return to Japan. As a thank you gift though, Saseki left his pet cat, Wagahai, in our duo's hands. As for where our duo live, let me explain. In case 4, we reunited with our friendly detective, Herlock Sholmes. He managed to help with the investigation, but he also inadvertently helped with Saseki's imprisonment. But water under the bridge, right? Our duo meet his roommate, Iris Wilson, a 10-year-old girl genius who's also the publisher of Sholmes' famous novels. After Saseki's trial, Sholmes and Iris offer Naruhodo and Suzuto a place to stay in their attic. This has served as their official base of operations since. Now with the four of them becoming a makeshift family, we get some nice bonding time. We even see Gina Lestrade, one of the witnesses from case 3, join up in the fun because Iris is taking a liking to her. However, the fun times don't last forever. Gina Lestrade is found the main suspect of a murder the very next day. The situation? Last night she went down to the pawnbrokery near Sholmes' house. She was looking for one of Iris' manuscripts that Sholmes deliberately put away without further explanation. During her breaking and entering, Pop Windebank, the shop owner, caught her. A few more individuals happened to be in the store trying to rob it as well. As is evident when Sholmes, Suzuto, and Naruhodo showed up to see what happened, resulting in Sholmes being shot. He survived, but Mr. Windebank wasn't so lucky as he passed away immediately. With no one to defend Gina, Naruhodo decides to do so. Suzuto, however, won't be joining him. She's received a message from Professor Mikotoba to return to Japan immediately, so she answers the summon and leaves on the day of the trial. So with Sholmes out of commission and Suzuto gone, that leaves Iris and Naruhodo to defend Gina in court. To make matters worse, Van Zieks will be prosecuting this trial. This is by far Naruhodo and the player's hardest case. But through the smog that Naruhodo had been in since case 3, he manages to find his resolve. He believes in Gina, just like Asogi did him. He'll defend her and find the truth, not just for this trial but for case 3 as well, as it seems that these two cases are closely tied together. With the stage set, the game is afoot. With the story now set, let me discuss my thoughts on this game, and what better place to start than with the gameplay. Since this is a visual novel, you shouldn't expect anything robust, but this game has a surprising amount of interactivity despite that. In this game you have two sections, the investigation sections and the trials. Investigations have Naruhodo running around London investigating crime scenes before the trial takes place. A lawyer needs to know what's going on if he wants to defend his client accurately after all. Investigations are exclusive to London because Japan only has trials. Every time we're in Japan, it's for the tutorial case. So I imagine the developers didn't want to bombard the player with too much information so soon. To investigate a scene, you click on objects in the area and sleuth information from them and the people there, be it witnesses, Scotland Yard, or Suzuto adding her own insights. You have the option to go to different locations available to you, but the overall story progression is pretty linear and direct. The answer deduction is the main mechanic for this section. Here, Naruhodo has to correct Herlock Sholmes' deductive reasoning during an investigation. The reason being because they're usually way off base. We see these in case 2, 4, and 5. In it, you investigate the current scene to help find and replace Sholmes' theory with the correct one using evidence. Now we have the trials. These are Ace Attorney's bread and butter. Every case in this game except case 2 has one, and it's what you should expect if you played one of these games before. You cross-examine a witness in the stand, poke at their testimony to find any inconsistencies, debate with the prosecution, find the truth, and most of the time get your client acquitted. It's an effective formula that's worked for the mainline games. The Greatest Attorney, however, adds a new twist to them. For trials in England only, we get a jury. In tandem with the judge, they decide the verdict. If they land on guilty, the defense can enter a summation examination. Here, Naruhodo hears the juror's reasoning behind their verdict. His goal is to change 4 out of the 6 jurors' minds so the trial can resume. You do so by using contradictions in their logic against one another to get them to revise their thoughts. Summation examinations serve as the last line of defense before the trial ends. And while it sounds mundane, something as small as adding a jury can really change up the formula these games have followed up to this point. Overall, there's a lot to chew on here. This is still a text box heavy game, but it does ask more of the player than you'd expect from the genre. Of course, I will admit that some of the gameplay mechanics can feel gimmicky due to repetition. The answer deduction and summation examination work, but only when used sparingly. If both are done more than twice in the same case, then it starts to get grating. Case 2 for the dance and case 5 for the examination are good examples. Barring this flaw, however, I still do enjoy the gameplay this game has to offer. Moving on, let's talk about the visuals. Ace Attorney games from the original trilogy all the way up to Apollo Justice use the pixel art based art style. As you go through them, you can see how much they've improved, but with the release of Dual Destinies, Capcom decided to make the move to 3D models. It started out decent, but with more reps under their belt with each passing game, the quality steadily improved to where it's at now. Something I find funny is that the Apollo Justice trilogy uses the RE engine for its games. The Resident Evil engine, which is used for stuff like this, is also used for this. I say all that to say, the 3D models for this game are genuinely great. They handle fluid movement well, especially with the more expressive characters like Sholmes and Van Zieks. These characters have so many poses and animations, so we get to see how much these models can really do. It can be janky sometimes though when skipping through the dialogue quickly because of how often the characters move. I won't fault the game for this though because it wasn't made with that in mind. A fast forward button would have been nice though. This game employs 3D motion capture. It is easy to tell when because of the contrast and frame rates, like Naruhodo pacing the courtroom or Sholmes shadow boxing. Admittedly, it can be jarring, but I enjoy it because of how fluid it is. The models also allow the great character designs to shine through. Each character exudes personality with what they wear and what they look like. Characters like Sholmes, Iris, Van Zieks, Strongheart, McGilded, Graydon, and Gina all convey their identity while still keeping the Victorian theme. Even similar designs like Asogi and Naruhodo have their distinctions. While they both wear university garbs, Asogi wears his headband and his sword Kuruma by his side. It depicts his strong will and rebellious nature. Meanwhile, Naruhodo is plain at the start, up until he adopts Kuruma, symbolizing him embracing Asogi's dream. There's a lot of thought put into these designs, especially since they play into the names being puns as well. And while I've given my flowers to the 3D aspects of this game, I can't forget about the 2D as well. The 2D sprites and the art style is just as good. Kazuya Nuri is a longtime Ace Attorney / Capcom artist, and her mastery shines through here. The 2D sprites that you see during the court record and during investigations, the artwork, the concept art, and the 2D animations are generally so phenomenal. They add so much love and life to this game and these characters. Before I forget, I want to talk about the presentation as well. It's cohesive to the point where nothing feels out of place. It's subtle, and that's thanks to the game adhering to the visual themes at play. Be it the color, the texture, the shape, or the design in its entirety, it's been carefully crafted to feel seamless. They all feel so natural to the flow of the game. I'm definitely belaboring the point here, but the visuals are so important to this game, especially when they're this good. Next we have the music, and I can't stress this enough. This quite possibly might be one of my favorite video game OSTs of all time. Yasumasa Kitagawa is at the helm here, and it's phenomenal. The game blends Japanese and English sound fonts to present a mix of the two cultures, all with an orchestral backing to boot. We have Asogi and Suzuto's themes showing the Japanese influence, compared to Sholmes and Iris's who show their British influence. And if it wasn't enough, the character themes are another look into the characters as well. While I won't go as far to say this game wouldn't be as good without this soundtrack, this game inherently wouldn't be what it is without it either. This soundtrack does a great job building a setting, enhancing characters, and creating moments when it comes in. It's just as important as what I mentioned prior and what I will mention going forward. In no particular order, my favorite themes are Gregson's theme, Prelude to Adventure, London, Pursuit, and Objection. There's more amazing themes that I'm leaving out, so I recommend giving this OST a listen if you can. Next we have the voice acting, which surprisingly this game does have. Granted, it's only the animated cutscenes and when someone shouts an objection, but it is there. I mention it because the voice actors are using accents for their characters, and I think that's really cool. Of course, the main accent is going to be English, but Naruhodo and Suzuto having Japanese accents when they speak English is a nice touch. It's small, but it adds to the immersion of it all because it makes sense. These two would have accents because English is their secondary language.
I will become a lawyer. I have to.
Susato Mikotoba, judicial assistant to the defense.
I have faith in you, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, as a lawyer and as a friend.
Herlock Sholmes, you say? Yes, I've heard the name. The protagonist in a series of short stories for the vulgar classes. A god of detection or some such.
This game's story is one of my favorites in the series. When I was younger watching Nico B's playthrough of this game, my mind was blown away because of how wildly different it was from the previous Ace Attorney entries up to that point. If you didn't know, this game was region locked to Japan for over half a decade. It was playable thanks to English fan translations like Scarlet Study before Capcom dropped the collection in 2021. So if you didn't have a means to play the game, word of mouth was the only way for you to learn about it. It made it mythical in a way. The reason people wanted these games over here, however, was because of the quality of their stories, and with the Great Ace Attorney specifically, how their stories differed from the status quo. So with that in mind, let's move on to the world building. Usually this series is set in modern-ish day with some spirituality mixed in to liven things up. As much as I like Ace Attorney, court is not interesting in the slightest, so I get why they do it. For this game though, the writing team takes a different approach. They pull from 19th century history to build around the story. A careful amount of detail was put into the history at play here to where this story could never take place in any other Ace Attorney game. For example, let's take a look at noticeable differences. There's horse-drawn carriages used as transportation on land. There's steam-powered trains for traveling longer distances, while ships are the only means of traveling worldwide. Brick houses, gas lamps, music boxes, furnaces, and fireplaces are everywhere, because that's what's most accessible for the average citizenry. Technology hasn't advanced enough yet for cars and electric-powered well, electric powered anything really. My favorite example of this time period is always the window tax. British citizens had to pay a tax for how many windows they had in their home, so people who couldn't afford it boarded up their windows to avoid the tax. The tax ended during the 19th century, but the effects of it can still be seen in this game. Stuff like that is interesting to me because it encapsulates the time period. The differences in culture and the era serve to teach me something every time I hop back into this game. Of course, the main reason why this game takes place in this era is because of the main influence, Sherlock Holmes. Whoever thought mixing Sherlock Holmes and Ace Attorney was a good idea deserves a medal because this is amazing. It makes sense too. I haven't read any of his adventures, but even I can tell the influence and love dripping from these two games. A valid concern I can see someone having is that this influence overshadows the Ace Attorney style this series is known for. I don't blame anyone for it because that could have been an outcome for this game. Wearing your influence on your sleeve only works when you transform it, not copy it. This game though not only puts them together but fuses it to make an amazing story. The influence is a nice accessory and not the whole thing. This game has personality that can't be categorized into one or the other. Like I said, it's a beautiful fusion that works spectacularly. Moving on, let's talk about the cases. These cases at their worst are okay. At their best, however, they're some of the best cases in the series. Case 1 is a solid first case, and honestly I believe it to be an underappreciated one too. It's a solid introductory case with compelling intrigue, believable stakes, and good characters to get us into the swing of things. While this case gets overshadowed by the second half of this game, it holds a special place in my heart. Not only is it the start to this epic adventure, but it's also just a good case in general. Case 2, however, I don't like as much. Due to there being no trial and only an investigation, it gets super bogged down. In investigations, you usually explore multiple locations, spicing up the monotony of text boxes and clicking things. This case though is just 3 rooms in a span of like 4 hours of gameplay. A case can get away with only having a trial because that's Ace Attorney's bread and butter. Case 1 and 3 are good examples of this. Case 2 however proves that an investigation can't do this. Of course this wouldn't be a problem if the narrative carried it, but it doesn't. The story just isn't as compelling as Case 3 will be, or as solid as Case 1. It's sandwiched between 2 cases that only make it look worse. In reality though, this case isn't even that bad. However, its weaknesses are apparent here in comparison to the rest of the game. Case 3 is when a story turns the corner. It's what differentiates this game from being a good entry to a legendary one. A lot of people view this case as the best one in the game, and I would agree if Case 5 didn't exist. With this being the introduction to Britain, our first case to prove we can be a lawyer, and our first case without a Sogi, there's a lot at stake here. This game takes any confidence you built and throws it out the window because just like Naruhodo, you're a fish out of water. The story, the mystery, the characters, and the ending all make this case one to remember. It set the standard that on most occasions, some Ace Attorney games may not reach, even with their final case. This game did it in its third and it only gets better. Case 4 isn't as good, but it holds its weight. It's better than Case 1 and 2, and also serves as a breather from the chaos that was Case 3. It gets serious at times, it has the best of both worlds with an investigation and a trial, but most of all, it feels like Ace Attorney. This feels like a Case Phoenix, Apollo, or Athena would take in the mainline games. It's a good reminder that while there's an underlying story being built from Case 1 through 3, the average person like Saseki needs representation. It's a good reframing for Naruhodo and the player. Case 5 though is wholeheartedly my favorite case in this game. Usually the final case of the game is the best one for this series, and it's no different here. There's emotional and physical stakes, intrigue with how this case connects to Case 3, and most of all, growth in our characters. This case is this game's peak in writing. I love this case so much and I love it more thanks to this playthrough. This game has an amazing story, but would you believe me if I told you it only gets better with the second game? Once we get there, I can fully talk about just how special this duology really is. For now though, let's move on to the final section of this video. Ace Attorney is known for having quirky, sometimes gimmicky, but overall endearing and memorable characters. Every case, a substantial amount of new characters are introduced, so much so that it can feel overwhelming trying to remember everyone in the game. There will be some you love and some you love to hate. At times the gimmicks can get annoying, especially when it's the 83rd time it's done and the bit still doesn't land. Even taking that into account however, I still do love these characters. They have amazing stories and personalities, be they relegated to a single case or a reoccurring character throughout the game. Each case has its own set of unique faces that will leave an impression on you because of how unique and different they are. The side characters are not as important as the main cast, but they're crucial to the Ace Attorney formula. If you have a weak roster, the case suffers without question. But one thing that can't be compromised is the main cast. They're the people who you interact with the most, so they have to spend the most time in the oven. If they're underbaked, then your game will be fundamentally cooked from the outset. Characters like Asogi, Suzuto, Sholmes, Iris, Van Zeeks, Gina, and Gregson all spent their time in the oven. While this game doesn't cover some of these characters' stories, they all still have strong personalities and interesting motivations. They contrast and support Naruhodo in the story well. The second game does dive deeper into them, but for now they have to make do because they aren't the main focus for this game. Someone else is. I want to direct your attention to Ryunosuke Naruhodo. He's a character that we know next to nothing about in terms of what he was doing before the start of the game. I like this decision though because it shows that whatever he was doing before doesn't matter. What matters now is that he's being accused of murder and has to stand trial for something he didn't do. All the signs are pointing to Naruhodo being falsely imprisoned. So in this scenario, it would be fair for Naruhodo to take a plea deal to get it over with, because how will he defend himself in a situation like this? Now this is where Asogi comes in. Asogi would fight tooth and nail to find the truth and to clear Naruhodo's name because he trusts his friend. This act leaves a deep impression on Naruhodo because it comes at his lowest point of his life. It shows how much one deed can change the trajectory of someone's life. Even in case 2 when Asogi passes away in the SS Buria, Naruhodo's scared but he's changed dramatically from who he was prior. He'll defend himself, not only for his own sake but for Asogi's as well. This moment serves to prove to others that Naruhodo is who Asogi thought he was. Naruhodo has the potential to succeed Asogi's wish, and while he doesn't know what it was, Naruhodo will still carry on his friend's legacy as a lawyer, to honor and to thank the man that changed his life. Case 3 will always be one of my favorite cases because of what it does to Naruhodo. It shakes his foundation by giving him a client that is the complete antithesis to Naruhodo in the form of Magnus McGilded. He wasn't helpless in the slightest. He forged evidence, bribed witnesses, and made a mockery of the court of law. Naruhodo defended a monster and got him acquitted. The very act spits on what he believed in thus far. His mantra of providing representation for those who don't receive it has been flipped on its head. That will be put on hold because case 4 still proves that there are people in need of representation. Seeing Saseki scared and alone in a country with no companions except his cat reminded Naruhodo of what it felt like to have no one in your corner. But while McGilded's trial was still on his mind, Saseki needed his help, so Naruhodo would rise to the occasion once again. While this case isn't a return to form, it's a reminder that Naruhodo still has what it takes, that not everyone will abuse your goodwill, and that there's still merit to the lawyer's badge he wears on his chest and a sword by his side. Good people like Saseki need lawyers. The court of law needs lawyers, so he has to keep going. But case 5 is where his character arc comes to a fever pitch. As I mentioned earlier, with the situation dire thanks to Suzuto leaving, Sholmes injured, and Gina on trial, Naruhodo is presented with a familiar choice. What will he do? Well, the choice is obvious, he's going to fight. By case 5, the old Naruhodo from case 1 is long gone. His promise to Asogi, the people he's met, the trials he's undergone, and the faith people have in him would never allow him to give up. With him knowing that Megildo was guilty thanks to Gina's confession, he can fight with his chest out. While he helped the man get acquitted, all he can do is keep moving forward and never make that mistake again. Besides, he has a client in front of him that needs his help, Gina Lestrade. Let me paint the picture for you real quick. Imagine you're a teenager who's down on her luck. You're an orphan with no one to take care of you. Every day of your life has been spent fighting to survive. You scrape up as much as you can for the little ones that you have to take care of. They're the closest thing to a family you have. So you steal to make ends meet. It's not ethical, but you don't care. One day you're unlucky enough to witness a murder in a carriage you're hiding in. You're usually good about being discreet, but tonight it fails you. The murderer manages to catch you on the scene. It's none other than Magnus McGilded, high-profile English mogul. He'll let you go if you keep quiet and follow his instructions. While you don't trust adults, you're scared, so you follow. This man is one of the most powerful people in England after all. Once the trial arrives, your distrust for adults is only solidified, as McGilded puts up a masterclass in corruption. But now with you being his accomplice, you feel like you're no different. Now skip a couple months after the trial. While he passed away after his acquittal, he promised you some money if you follow his plan. While you aren't proud of it, you needed the coinage, so you did it. While you're in the process of getting your money, you end up running into the lawyer who defended McGilded in court. He and his friends invite you up into their home despite you having stolen from them. During that night, it's the closest thing you felt to having a family and friends. And all it was just you hanging out with a couple of people loosely around your age. But that guilt still eats away at your soul. You deceived every single one of them. You don't deserve their love. But your luck has to be absolutely dismal because you're caught up in another murder, with you being the main suspect due to unfortunate circumstances and timing. All thanks to your continued involvement with Magnus McGilded. Now you're up a creek with no paddle, but because of your guilt, you feel like this is what you deserve. But in your darkest hour, someone comes to your aid. The lawyer who defended McGilded in court, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. He believes in your innocence. Imagine you're Gina, where the lawyer you have actively betrayed up to this point believes in you because you're a good person. You never trusted an adult before, but this one suddenly trusts you. It's a strange feeling for you. Naruhodo doesn't care who she was because what he sees is a scared 17-year-old girl. So with no one in her corner, he'll defend her until the embers of his life expire. Because if he doesn't, who will? The culmination of this resolve is a moment that gives me goosebumps even now. It's near the end of the trial where Naruhodo is trying to get Gregson to admit the truth. Let me play the clip for you now.
Let's not forget, Inspector, that you, a Scotland Yard officer, needs confidential case details to a witness. But you continue to lie to the court, and all because, by fair means or foul, you determined to do your duty. Well, by fair means or foul, I'm prepared to do mine. Don't you dare. I will stop at nothing to protect my client. I don't care who I make an enemy of. I remember this scene.
This scene not only earns Naruhodo Van Zeek's respect, but also solidifies him as a lawyer worth his salt. Remember, Van Zeek knows of McGilded's malpractice, so from his perspective, Naruhodo is just someone he bought off. But the transfer student kept coming back, getting better and better with every trial. Now he's here in the British Court of Law, declaring he will become an enemy of the nation if it means that it proves Gina Lestrange's innocence. It's his duty as her lawyer, by fair means or foul, to reach the truth for her sake. This is the pinnacle in Naruhodo's character. His game has been leading up to this point from the very start, a point to where Naruhodo can stand as a lawyer in the court of law, with no doubt in his mind about who he's defending or what he's defending. And it's all worth it in the end, all for that exhausted, teary-eyed smile that Gina gives us at the end of the trial. It showed that Naruhodo was right. She really was just a scared teenager afraid to ask for help. Seeing her lawyer go to bat for her like that, who wouldn't cry? The greatest attorney adventures is Naruhodo's journey of becoming a lawyer good enough to continue Asogi's legacy. He received help at his lowest, managed to stand on his own, make lifelong friends, strengthen his resolve, and stand as a pillar of truth in the courtroom, proving Asogi right in the end. This growth will be necessary for the second game, because what awaits our cast is malfeasance so malicious, it puts what happened here to shame. Naruhodo's resolve will be pivotal, but he's more than ready. Anyway, this game is great, man. It's not perfect by any means, but it doesn't need to be, because of how high the highs reach. It's a 9 out of 10 for me, one of my favorite Ace Attorney entries, and one of my favorite visual novels ever. And that's what we'll end it for now. This video turned out a lot longer than I thought it would be, so I hope you enjoyed it. I recommend giving this game a shot. It's on Steam if you're interested. If you like visual novels, I say give it a go. I should already have a couple of streams for the Greatest Attorney Resolve on my channel. I probably couldn't wait to play it. As always, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I don't know what's next for the upcoming video, but I'll make a community post when the time comes. Until then, however, I'll see you on the next video. Peace.
Welcome back to Hits 95.7. Who am I talking to?
This is Shannon.
Hey there, Shannon. We just received word that your son's preschool has just been carpet bombed. How we feeling?